Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Last night were the MTV Movie Awards, and granted, they picked a horrible night to air. You had only the second episode of Game of Thrones' explosive fourth season and the season premiere of Mad Men's final season, or at least the first half of their final season. And then there was MTV trying to get into the mix, I think largely unsuccessfully, which really speaks to how far television has come as a competitor for movies. That these two shows, which have supposedly a different demographic than MTV, competing with a big awards show that was surprisingly entertaining and chock full of movie stars. That said, though, even beyond the quality of Game of Thrones and Mad Men, I was surprised at the disdain that was very apparent across the entire internet for the MTV Movie Awards, which I felt wasn't fair. It was coming from viewers, not really on this channel, though. Most people were pretty cool about the MTV Movie Awards with my coverage of it that I posted Saturday afternoon. But even beyond viewers, I think a lot of the press were very dismissive of the MTV Movie Awards. Surprisingly so, and to what I would say somewhat was an unprofessional manner, because it is a legitimate awards show from a legitimate channel with a legitimate demographic. So to dismiss that, I feel, is close-minded. And there was a lot of interesting things going on last night besides just the entertainment factor. So if you missed the show, don't worry, MTV plays it repeatedly over the next few days, so you can catch it if you're interested. And I would recommend at least taping it so you can fast forward through some of the interesting moments. But I'm going to give you my breakdown here and fill you in on what I observed going on last night. And I also just want to say that the MTV Movie Awards definitely serves a purpose. On the one hand, first of all, it recognizes actors in Hollywood who are servicing a certain demographic. They are also contributing to the success of Hollywood. And I saw a number of websites saying, oh, move over, Oscars. MTV says The Hunger Games: Catching Fire is the best movie of the year. And it's like, it was a very successful movie. A lot of people really liked it. Critics liked it. It was the most successful domestically at the box office. And it should get a Best Movie Award, as I said in my coverage, and I think MTV is the place to give it to them. So I think that this group of actors and talent deserve to be recognized as well, and this is their chance to get that recognition. So I don't think it's competing with the Oscars, it's just something different. And we often, a lot of people often say they wish the Oscars would celebrate mainstream movie-going more, and then you have this place that is doing it, and it's disheartening to see people so dismissive of that. The other thing which was fascinating to see is because considering the demographic that's in play here, the teen demographic, one of the most coveted demographics in Hollywood, you saw a number of actors for instance, repositioning themselves or trying to reposition themselves post-Oscars, which was fascinating to see. And you also could see how movies were positioning themselves and actors who was most important to the studio for the upcoming summer movie season. For instance, it occurred to me that Chris Pratt is the only one doing publicity for Guardians of the Galaxy, despite the fact it's a team movie. Zoe Saldana has a fan base. Where is she? Bradley Cooper and Vin Diesel are providing voice work for this film. So I just think it's very surprising not to see any of them showing up at these events as well. Karen Gillan is a villain, and she's in Oculus, which did pretty well this weekend. You'll find that out on Movie Math later today. I'll be discussing that. So why isn't she coming out as well? So I just thought it was surprising that Marvel's decided to put all of their eggs in one basket with Chris Pratt when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy. But I'm going to talk through the show. I'm going to go through the basic show, what was going on. So I just think that that's what we're going to discuss. The industry, what's going on, and also celebrating actors who contribute to mainstream movie going. First off, the big thing, I think the biggest story of the night, there were a couple of really good things that went on, but Jennifer Lawrence didn't show up. I thought was extremely disappointing. In my coverage, I said that one of her best qualities was that she seems to appreciate her reign as an MTV movie queen, while Kristen Stewart seemed uncomfortable, although that's kind of her shtick, to be uncomfortable. But Jennifer Lawrence seemed to embrace this group, which are really the people who are driving her. I hope she doesn't get distracted with trying to be an artiste and the Oscar crowd, because that's all well and good, but the reason that she's so valuable to the studios is because of all these people from the the MTV demographic that she brings into the theater and gets to buy tickets. So the fact that she couldn't be bothered to show up on a night that largely celebrated her and the movie that she was in was a very disappointing move, and I think potentially a big mistake for her. But I'm curious, anybody who watched the show, were you disappointed that Jennifer Lawrence didn't show up, or do you still love her and you're sure she had a good excuse? So let's start out. Conan O'Brien. I think he did a very good job hosting the show. I was surprised. It was nice to see him back in semi-top form. He wasn't as good as I think his glory days, but he was better than he's been lately. I liked his opening. He did this great thing where he decided to he had a great insider joke where he said, okay, for my opening, I'm going to get 50 movie star cameos. And the MTV executive said, oh, but that's not funny. And I thought Conan was very funny. It was very insightful when he said, oh, young people don't want to laugh anymore. They just want to see celebrities and go, woo. And I was like, pretty clever, Conan. So then he got his 50 celebrity cameos. There was a little bit of a gag at the end. I don't want to give it away in case you're going to watch the episode, but I thought he did a nice job. And I thought his opening monologue was pretty good. Hit or miss, but still solid. And it was impressive to see Conan be able to bridge the gap between, I think, his demographic and the younger, a little more hipper MTV demographic. So kudos to him for doing, I think, a very nice job. I liked his set, by the way. He had a lot of jokes to make about it, but I thought the set looked very cool, and I liked that the show focused mostly on movies. Sometimes when MTV covers other areas besides music, they shoehorn a lot of musical performances in there anyway, and musical presenters. But this was almost, I mean, sure they had a couple of performances, but this was almost a night entirely about film, which I thought was really great. And I liked the way that they presented each category with the fake trailers. I liked Conan O'Brien's 6-second Vine versions of The Wolf of Wall Street and American Hustle. I thought that was pretty funny. And I also liked the mix of celebrities. For instance, they had Lupita Nyong'o was there in a big way, Martin Scorsese, Grumpy Cat, Skrillex. Usually sometimes these days when you have comedians, especially from, the Judd Apatow crowd or the Seth Rogen crowd, you know who it's going to be because it's all their buddies. But that was not the case here. I think Conan and MTV really reached out to get a really diverse demographic that would appeal to a lot of people. So I thought that was really good. Let's see, what else? Okay, so then the first person who came out was Lupita Nyong'o. She was also on the opener, but she was the first presenter, and I thought she really changed her look considerably, to the point where I was like, that Lupita Nyong'o? She had these black glasses on. Sometimes I feel celebrities put those on to just feel smart or to look smart, but I think she worked it. She had a beautiful dress on. I thought also Amanda Seyfried, also who came out next with Seth MacFarlane to present, I thought they had the best looks of the evening. They looked really great and a lot of fun. And it was interesting to see Lupita trying to loosen up a little bit, seem more accessible, because I think she seemed very regal with her Oscar campaigning, and certainly with that great Oscar speech, but maybe, because of her age, they're like, well, you should be appealing to the MTV crowd. And maybe now you're seeming a little too Meryl Streep. So I think it's great that her management team seems to be on top of that. So that was very exciting to see. Also, Jared Leto, she ended up giving best, transformation to him. And he was very gracious as well as always. But he was a presenter as well. And he was very aggressively trying to get into this space, which I also thought was very interesting. So I'm interested to what role he's probably going to be maybe doing as a follow-up to Dallas Buyers Club. I think Jared Leto, he went away for a long time and came back for Dallas Buyers Club. I don't think he's going to go away again. I think he's really trying to position himself as a talent, and with this. And connect with this demographic. Maybe also to help with his music career, who knows? He does have a band, but I thought it was very interesting to see him trying to, see if he can parlay his Oscar win into maybe a bigger mainstream career. So that was very interesting to see. Let's see. Also, Mila Kunis won Best Villain. At first I was like, that's ridiculous. She was the worst villain in that list. Although Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan kind of gives her a run for her money. But I thought her speech was very endearing. If she has this kind of fan support, I'm wondering how Jupiter Ascending will do. I'm wondering if fans will come out and support Channing Tatum and Mila Kunis. This was a big night for both of them. And then also I like that she was like, oh, I'm the only woman who was nominated, and it's great that I won. And I was like, oh, that's nice. But hopefully next time you'll have a better role too. But so I thought that she, turned things around. But then interestingly, we're all like, yay, a woman won Best Villain. But then I thought that the way Zac Efron was treated for his win for Best Shirtless Performance was actually pretty appalling. First, Conan, when he introduced it, he had a fake Chippendale's muscle suit on, which was very convincing. I thought that was very well done. It was a good gag. But then they had Best Shirtless, and they had two presenters. One was Jessica Alba. Another was a singer that I'm not entirely familiar with, but she was very aggressive, and basically she was saying, oh, whoever wins this award better come up with their shirt off. And so Zac Efron won, which I thought was very interesting. Catching Fire didn't win everything, which was also, I think, to the credit of the viewers who voted for the MTV Movie Awards. It won a lot of awards, sure, but it didn't win some big ones like Best Fight and here Best Shirtless. So Zac Efron took the award, which I thought was interesting because nobody saw the movie he was nominated for, that awkward moment, but he still clearly has his fan base. I wonder what it's going to take to get them to go see his movie. Hopefully for Neighbors they'll show up, where he also is shirtless for a good amount of the time. But anyway, he came up with a shirt on, obviously. And then he was trying to give his acceptance speech, and that singer ran up behind him and pulled his shirt off. And I thought that was like bordering on assault. And if someone did that to a female, an actress, it would just be, everyone would be up in arms. So the fact that Zac Efron was treated that way, I thought was really disrespectful and going too far. I mean, I'm all for equality when it comes to sexiness. We can have bimbos and mimbos, but I think that you can't assault them. Some people, I was discussing this with some people, and they were like, well, what if it was all part of like a gag and it was meant to be done? But I thought that Zac Efron, unless he's a really good actor after all, like really good, he seemed a little embarrassed. But I thought he handled it nicely, despite being put in that position. Then the two big people who were celebrated were Channing Tatum and Mark Wahlberg. And by showcasing both of them, it was interesting to see how similar they were. They're two, regular blue-collar guys who are really likable, and I think have both, come from, Channing Tatum from stripping, Mark Wahlberg from stripping while singing, and they've really made themselves movie stars through a lot of their own hard work, which I think is also impressive. And they both found that their best genre is comedy. So it was funny to kind of see two different versions, a younger and an older version of the same kind of movie star. Let's start with Channing Tatum, who got his award first. I thought he was great. Jonah Hill gave a wonderful presentation of his award. He had a great funny bit about how, it must have been Channing Tatum was a real trailblazer. It's so hard for good-looking people to become movie stars. That was funny, but then he told a really good story about how Channing Tatum, how he met him, and how Jonah Hill had handpicked Channing Tatum to star in 21 Jump Street opposite of him, and how he convinced Channing Tatum to take on the role. And it was a very endearing story that I think made both of them look really good and very professional. So I thought that was a really great moment for both of them. And I thought Tatum's speech was really appealing. And it reminded me he has two big movies this summer, 22 Jump Street, obviously, and Jupiter Ascending. I think 22 Jump Street is obviously going to be a big hit. We'll see what happens with Jupiter Ascending. But that Gambit role, I'm telling you, he will get people in that. We're going to discuss a little bit more about casting later in today's episode. But then on to Mark Wahlberg. I thought it was interesting he used the opportunity to promote the Entourage movie that he's producing. Mark Wahlberg, very, very prolific producer behind the camera, to his credit. So he used this show to promote that movie, which is coming out next year. He had that cast present the award to him. But I liked his speech as well. I thought he was very funny, saying, I know what this award means. It means you're too old for this group. Now, get out of here. And I think to some degree it is time for Mark Wahlberg to move on more to the big leagues with, I think he got there with Ted, now he has Transformers. I think he is a talent to still continue to watch, and I'm excited to see what he does next. But he was very gracious, and I really enjoyed his speech as well. I also thought that the show did a great job with a tribute to Paul Walker. I thought that was really nice. Handled very respectfully, and I thought, one of the best tributes I've seen to Paul Walker, except the one that the Fast 7 team put out. And then also Josh Hutcherson, really, he was a gentleman last night. He was so great. He was so nice to his fans. He really took, the other woman cast, did a pretty lascivious presentation for best male performance. Did a lot of inappropriate things. It was a night of man candy, without men volunteering to be candy. But he took it in stride. He was very nice, and also he gave a really nice tribute to Philip Seymour Hoffman when Catching Fire won Movie of the Year. And only he and Sam Claflin showed up to accept that award, which I thought was really sad. Again, Jennifer Lawrence should have been there because the fans are the ones that have driven that franchise and made it what it is. So I thought Hutcherson was a perfect example of someone who provides a service to Hollywood, has his fan base, makes a lot of money for Hollywood, and is a really humble, thank the crew as well and all the people who make the movie with the actors who are on screen. And this show was a great example of a night for him to shine, and he deserves it. Although I have to say, for instance, because Jennifer Lawrence didn't show up, they didn't even really present Best Female Performance. They didn't get an entry. They didn't go over the other nominees. Cameron Diaz just ran in and said, oh, by the way, after Hutcherson got his award, Best Female Performance goes to Jennifer Lawrence. And I have to say, though, hopefully she had a lot to drink, but I can't believe that Cameron Diaz doesn't know the name of the biggest domestic box office hit of the year, because she was calling it The Hunger Games Catching Fires. I was like, wow, Cameron Diaz, you are really out of touch with your industry. Then finally, Johnny Depp Jennifer Lawrence couldn't be bothered to show up, but Johnny Depp could, and he presented Movie of the Year, the big award of the night. And so that's actually going to bring us into our second story. So that's my coverage of the MTV Movie Awards. I'm very curious for those of you who watched it, what you thought. Write your thoughts down below, and again, what you thought of Jennifer Lawrence, and if you can now maybe understand a little bit more the value of the MTV Movie Awards. But let's move on to the second story. That's Johnny Depp in China. As you know, he was at the MTV Movie Awards, as I just said, to promote Transcendence. That's why he was there. He's really working hard to promote this film, and he's been in China. His first trip ever to China to promote a film. A lot of movie stars are heading there these days, and this story is very interesting for two reasons. First, and that it underscores, just the assembly line of movie stars heading over to China to plug their films. Captain America did it, and it benefited from a huge box office there. Really doing well in China. I think it's made like $80 million alone in China. That's huge for its bottom line, and you can just see why it's so valuable for these movie stars to head over there. So Johnny Depp, first trip ever to China. He's been very effusive. He's been hugging everybody. He's going on every personal appearance and talk show he can. And while all the other stars have come to China from Hollywood, nobody's been treated quite like Johnny Depp. State Television, or one of their national networks, gave him a 2-night television special. And guess what? The audience in China on this network every night is 200 million people. That is like, I think the United States has maybe like a little under 400 million at this point. So that's just how many people in China tune into a show. Except no show, even the Super Bowl, even the Academy Awards. None of these shows have that kind of viewership. So that's amazing that in China, Johnny Depp was exposed to that big of a crowd for 2 nights. And it was talking about Johnny Depp's trip to China, how great it was that he was there, him saying how much he loved China, maybe he could live there, he'd love to shoot a movie there, and also talking about, of course, Transcendence, which is going to open, I believe, day and date in China and the United States. Now, I think this is great that Johnny Depp is working so hard for his film, but he's not disclosing the entire story, which I think is a bad idea. And basically what he's not telling you, it's public knowledge, but he's not really making it apparent, is that he's getting 15% of the box office. He gets $20 million up front to star in Transcendence, and then also 15% of the box office. Movie stars make a lot of money that way. Harrison Ford, for instance, made like $60 million extra on top of his salary for Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. No wonder he wants to make another Indiana Jones film. Robert Downey Jr. made $50 million extra off of the Avengers, and we'll see what Johnny Depp makes off of Transcendence. That doesn't look like it's going to be a big number, but I think he's trying to get it up as high as he possibly can. And I think that it's not really fair for him to go and say, oh, you have to see this movie, I believe in it so much, when in reality, to some degree, I think he believes in wanting to get a big paycheck. Some of you have asked me about movie star salaries before. I'm a big believer, actually, in small salaries up front and then big back-end participation, because I think that these big budgets cripple a movie. How often, movie math, are we talking about the fact that a movie is almost incapable of getting a profit because it costs so much to make it, not even including the advertising? If these actors would work for cheap up front and have faith in their own abilities to bring people in, put their money where their mouth is, everybody, I think, would benefit more. The studio would benefit more, and they would still make millions of dollars. But I think this is a business model that obviously isn't going to happen because so many people get a cut of a movie star's salary. So you have a whole village of people who need that big salary to come in, and those are the ones who are negotiating for it, because obviously agents and managers get 15% for managers, 10% for agents get a cut of that salary. So they want the big money up front. So that's the second story of the day. Now the third and the fourth story, usually that's another story and a viewer question, but today it's going to be actually 2 kind of semi-viewer questions. 2 issues came up, Friday and over the weekend. People asking questions in the comments for clarification, and so I want to clarify. The first is that Draft Day. When I reviewed Draft Day on late Friday night, I talked about how good the editors were, and I gave them a shout out. It was an editing team, and I said they really did a great job of elevating the material. And someone, I believe it was Cindy Jansen, I'm sorry if I'm getting your last name wrong, Cindy. Cindy said, but Grace, doesn't the director, Ivan Reitman in this case, tell the editors what to do? Shouldn't he get praise for the work that they've done? And that is actually not the case, Cindy, so I wanted to clarify that. Directors oversee an entire project, and I think Hollywood, because it's a town built on ego, likes to perpetrate the myth that directors and actors are really responsible for the entire film, and what everybody else contributes is minimal. But that's actually not true. There's so many moving parts in a movie, and it's such a big production that the director, while they come and they really do direct the performances, obviously, but when it comes to these other things like set design, costume design, editing, sound design, etc., they have to they come in and they oversee and they have a discussion with that professional about what they want to happen, and often that professional professional has suggestions, and then they decide what they want to do, and that person is left to go and do their job because they are, as I said, a professional. So with editing, for instance, they might sit down and the conversation could go a couple of ways. And with here in Draft Day, since Ivan Reitman's never used this kind of editing technique before, either he was inspired and told his editors what he would like to do, or maybe perhaps his editors came to him with the idea and he was like, okay, that's great, go with it. But anyway, it was very inventive. Basically, to tell you in short, it used a lot of wipes, cutouts, split screens that really helped elevate these business discussions, which was a good part of the film, and make it seem very exciting and energetic. So anyway, once the director and the editors have decided on what they want to do, the editors are still the ones who have to execute it. For instance, with a movie, because movies have to work on such a fast timetable, and they take so long to shoot, often an editor is working on assembling a film while it's still shooting. They're sending dailies and all the takes to the editors to start breaking down and put together. It's very rare that a director will sit there over an editor's shoulder and watch what they're doing every step of the way. They'll come in and look at cuts, they'll come in and look at, rough edits and maybe give some notes, but of course the editor really is responsible for doing a large chunk of that, and it's a creative job. So I just wanted to, I think it's a perfectly natural question, Cindy. I think Hollywood does a lot, as I said, to make you believe that it's all the director, but I think it's important not only for the credit of those professionals, but for people who are considering going to different professions in Hollywood to realize that it's not all the director, and that you don't just do what other people say. You're not an automaton. These people are creative professionals who give creative suggestions and input. All right, so that's the third story/question. The fourth is on Friday. A lot of people, particularly BTT viewer Raz for his birthday, had said, "Grace, please talk about The Last of Us as a movie." And it's a very popular video game from Sony. And in my discussion, I said that I thought Mark Wahlberg would be a perfect choice for this movie. It's a single dad, blue-collar dad in the South, who's had a good relationship with his daughter. He transfers to this new person he needs to protect, and some people explained to me that the movie really follows like his dark struggle who has to become more and more of a vicious killer to protect this girl who's a stand-in for his daughter. And that's a very interesting emotional journey. And it's a little bit of a zombie movie. And I thought Mark Wahlberg would really excel in that kind of role and bring in an audience. And a number of people, some people liked my idea, but some people were really against it. They were like, "That's a horrible idea, Grace. You can't do that. We want like Josh Holloway. We would love to see Hugh Jackman in the role. Or Josh Brolin." Those were the three people that were suggested. And I really wanted to speak to casting so that you can get a better idea of what you have to think about when you're casting a project. So, just to help you understand why decisions are made, and to also make, more, smart, I don't want to say smarter, more business smart, I guess we'll say, business smart decisions when you're thinking of casting choices. You need to think of someone who's going to bring in an audience. Now, there are two ways to go here. I went with a star. Mark Wahlberg, he's had his misses, but overall, he is a box office draw. So I went with somebody who I felt would appeal to the necessary demographic, would maybe bring in people who weren't fans of the game, because Mark Wahlberg has a large fan base, and I picked somebody who has done roles like this before. I think if you were to mix, perhaps, like his being like a dad, with the emotional range he showed in films like The Fighter and Lone Survivor, I think you could put together like a really nice mix that would, be entertaining, both, it would be faithful to the game, and it would also, as I said, bring in new fans. Now, the problems with the suggestions that a number of you came up with, well, they're certainly good actors and probably look more like the avatar in the game, the way the character was animated, is that Josh Holloway, TV star, I think he certainly looks like the character. I believe it's Joel in The Last of Us. He certainly looks like him, but at this point, movies just have not worked out for him. He's had Lost, and he doubled down with Intelligence, I believe, on CBS, a semi-hit, but he's just not going to move up to being a star of a film. And then, of course, Hugh Jackman, if he's not Wolverine, he does not gross. And then Josh Brolin also just does not bring people into theaters. So the only reason I wouldn't go with someone like Mark Wahlberg is perhaps if he's too expensive, because I think that The Last of Us, one of the benefits of it is it would be a very inexpensive movie to make. So if Mark Wahlberg wants a huge payday and isn't willing to take back end, I'd be like, you're going to keep me from making a profit. It's up to the producers then to decide if Mark Wahlberg will bring in enough money to warrant his payday. If not, then I think that instead of going with one of the actors I think who's had their chance that you guys picked, I think you need to go with somebody who's new, who's on their way up, who hasn't quite made it yet but might. I think that's the next best place to go. So, a discovery. That's how Jennifer Lawrence was picked, Robert Pattinson, these actors were selected and then they became big. So you don't want somebody that the audience has already passed on, basically. You need to find, and that's where a casting director comes in. Casting director has their ear to the ground and knows who's an up-and-comer and who potentially could make it big if given the right material. So that's why I picked the Mark Wahlberg for The Last of Us casting, and that's why I think that the choices that you guys suggested, while perhaps faithful to the material, from a business standpoint, aren't the right decision. So I hope that's helpful in explaining a little bit more how casting works, and that it's about picking the right person for the role, but also for the success of the film. You're not just casting on talent and looks, because it's a business and you need a return on your considerable investment. So that's today's morning movie news. I hope that it was fun and entertaining and also educational on those last two bits. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you'll tune in tomorrow. Let me know what you'd like to see covered and any questions you might have, and you can check out some more episodes right now.